In terms of like your customer acquisition costs and stuff like that, are you always shooting for a specific AOV in the funnels that you create? Is there like a kind of a benchmark AOV that you've figured out for your customer acquisition, like that's kind of the gold standard for where you're at, or how do you think about it?
Typically, we'll shoot for 60 to 80% of our CPA on day zero. A lot of times what they'll do is they'll pick a target CPA. They'll pick a target cost per acquisition of what it is that they're willing to spend. And I don't care if my CPA is $50, if it's $100, if it's $150, if it's $250, as long as I'm liquidating 60+%, somewhere between 60 and 80% of that CPA, I'm fine with that. So, right, this is where, a lot of times people will say, I'm overpaying. It's too expensive for me to acquire a buyer. And in my mind, what that really is saying is that we just don't have the customer value. If everybody else can only operate with a $50 CPA and I can operate with a $150 CPA, I have a disgusting advantage, right, in the marketplace. And so, right, so I'm not looking for the lowest CPA possible, right? I'm certainly always looking to decrease our cost per acquisition, but ultimately I'm looking to be able to operate at the highest levels, the highest CPAs, because I know that gives us an advantage in the marketplace. And so in order to do that, we work really on increasing the value of a buyer, and we focus on increasing the value of a buyer. Caleb, like what a lot of people don't realize, like I believe it is much more difficult to lower the CPA than it is to increase the AOV or to increase the customer value. It's much more difficult to lower the cost per acquisition. Number one, there's a limit to how much you can lower that cost per acquisition, right? There's only so much that you can decrease your cost per acquisition. You're also, when it comes to cost per acquisition, you're talking about things like media costs, which there is there's a benchmark. There's a certain level of media costs that are determined by the market, that are determined by supply and demand on the platforms that we have no control over. And then the second piece is sales conversion rate, increasing sales conversion rate. And I believe that increasing sales conversion rate, because it works with prospects, because we're talking about converting more prospects, is the hardest part of every marketing campaign, is to get more prospects to buy. It is a much easier game to play when you are focused on increasing the value of a buyer. When you can increase the value of a buyer, whether it be through that initial campaign and or through multiple campaigns, you have unlimited upside potential in how much you can increase that value. And it's a much easier proposition because you're now talking to buyers. And so getting buyers to buy more is infinitely easier than getting prospects to buy for the first time.
You just hit on something there that I think is so important. Like the difference between regular marketers and elite marketers and advertisers is that the elite guys are always trying to increase the amount of money they can spend to acquire a customer, and everybody else is trying to lower the cost associated with that. All of the top companies, the top marketers that I have seen that are able to scale to really, really big numbers, they're always trying to move that needle to see how much they can spend and above everybody else to acquire a customer. And I think that's just brilliant. And the way you said it there was spot on.
I think, Caleb, the analogy that I use is, I go back to, right, we're investors, and I think about, let's say, the real estate investor. And let's say you've got these two real estate investors and they're looking to invest in a small commercial property. And, let's say they're looking to invest in $1 million property. And so, right, they're both kind of bidding on this $1 million property. And you've got the first real estate investor knows how to turn that $1 million property into a $1.5 million property through upgrades or whatnot. And the other real estate investor knows how to turn that property into a $2.5 million property, right? They know how to increase the value a lot more of that property. Well, that investor can spend a lot more, can outbid the other investor to get the property because he knows how to increase the value enough to offset that. And when that investor can go in there and say, I'll spend 700 grand, 800 grand, not, whatever the number extra to get that property. I'll go above your bid. I'll go way above what it is that they're bidding because I can. Then they have a gross advantage. And so that's, to me, and it's a much easier thing to do than to decrease CPA. It's a difficult task to decrease CPA. It's a much easier task to increase customer value.
I love that story. I love that analogy. It reminds me of a story Rich Sheffrin told me years ago. He was telling me that there was a real estate company in New York, and there was this building that was for sale, and I forget the exact specifics of it, but this is the general idea. It was like a 20-story building or something, and there were two companies looking to bid on this building and buy it, and it was for sale for, I don't know, 300 million or something like that, and one company came in and offered, like, I don't know, 600 million, twice the amount of money. And all the other, guys that were looking to buy this building thought it was absolutely insane. But these guys obviously bought the building. And what ended up happening was there was some sort of an agreement on that building that in 5 years, there was a zoning issue that allowed you to add another 20 stories to the building. And nobody else knew about that except this company. And that's why they were able to pay twice as much. It's because by adding an extra 20 stories onto the building in 5 years, it was going to be worth, 1 billion. And it's having the end result in mind and knowing the value of the end result of what it is that you're doing allows you to be able to kind of make these decisions, obviously in acquiring a piece of property. But part of what you're saying here as being an investor in the marketing world, knowing the value of the end result allows you to be able to acquire customers at a much different rate and at a much different price than everybody else, which I think brings us perfectly into the back end, where I know that you're an absolute master of this stuff, Todd. So if you enjoyed this clip and you'd like to benefit from more monetization secrets, go and register now for Monetization Daily. You can go to monetizationresearch.com to get it. It is a free newsletter that is absolutely awesome. It is delivered to your email inbox, and it contains lots of great monetization tips, tactics, and strategies that you will love. Again, head on over to monetizationresearch.com to get it now.